Welcome to Love to See It, a podcast about the women of Love is Blind Season 9.
Or at least two of them.
Two of our faves. On today's bonus episode of Love to See It, we're talking to Madison and Kait of Love is Blind Denver.
I am so excited for you all to hear these conversations. We got about 30 minutes with each of them, and we really tried to dive into the big questions that we've been having about their Love is Blind journeys. And for Madison, especially, we wanted to focus on the events of episodes 10 and 11. Of course, the breakup with Joe and everything that happened after. So we're going to speak to Madison first, and then you'll hear our conversation with Kait. And I'm not going to lie, I think they're pretty juicy. Madison, welcome to Love to See It. We are so excited to have you.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
We were just really excited to watch your journey this season. It's been a lot of ups and downs, a lot of twists and turns. How are you feeling now that the show is airing and you're watching it back? Have you even watched episodes 10 and 11 yet? By the time this comes out, those will have dropped.
Yeah, I have watched everything. I am up to date. Overall, I'm feeling really good. The love and support has been so amazing, and just my fans are incredible. So it's been really, really cool, and just being able to connect with so many diverse audiences has been really special.
Yeah. So we'll focus most of our questions on the most recent drop, but we did want to talk a little bit about some of what we saw in the pods. You've talked both on the show and also in your interview on the Vial Files about your retinitis pigmentosa, and obviously something you talked about with Joe in the pods. We were curious, did you see that support from Joe throughout your relationship, like in the pods and then when you were actually living together? Because I know that's something that you had brought up multiple times.
Honestly, it didn't come up a ton, just in our relationship. I'm very high functioning with my RP. I have acclimated very, very well. So oftentimes people don't see it or recognize it. It really is kind of an invisible disability, right? So I don't know that he really had an opportunity to necessarily support me in some ways. Do I think he could have been a little bit more supportive? Yeah. There were a couple of times that I felt like maybe he kind of forgot or joked about it, that we don't see, but it's nothing crazy.
Mm. You also mentioned that Joe told you off camera that he normally dates more petite women. Obviously, this is something that he spoke really bluntly about in his confessionals. And of course, we, along with the rest of the audience, were really shocked by this because you were self-evidently stunning, and it was confusing that he had that reaction. But you said on the Vial Files that this kind of led you into an eating disorder.
Yeah.
And I don't want to push too much on this point, but I'm curious if that was something that had ever come up for you before, if it was really just a reaction to what was going on in your relationship with Joe.
It was not something that I had struggled with before. I think as a woman, there's already pressures for how we look and just kind of body standards. So, did I have maybe what I would consider normal body image considerations? Yeah. I think that this experiment itself already lends itself to such heightened emotions and is so intense. And you're already kind of picking yourself apart, right? Like knowing when you're filming, thinking, do I look okay? And so then to hear that, was really disheartening and really confusing for me. And it triggered some insecurity in me that must have already kind of been living there or existing there. But no, I had never struggled with an eating disorder prior to that.
And do you think that, after that conversation, knowing that he had this kind of idea about you or your body type, that affected the rest of your dynamic throughout the rest of taping? Because I feel like for me, I would never be able to let go of
Right.
that.
Yeah, same.
I didn't. I never did let go of that. I think it absolutely affected, the way that I held myself, carried myself throughout the rest of taping. When you see us get into this argument in the kitchen, while that was edited, while there was a whole 20-minute conversation prior to me hitting my boiling point, I think that you're seeing I'm now operating from a place of insecurity that was really prompted by his words. Obviously I take responsibility for how I acted and the way that I carried myself, but that was definitely not my usual operating space.
I mean, that makes so much sense. I definitely saw in moments where it felt like you were operating from a place of like a deep well of insecurity and kind of constantly searching for that validation. And you were sort of set up to fail because if that is the dynamic that you're entering into right at the beginning of your relationship, I can see it being really easy to fall into that kind of pattern. And that's like a very hard pattern to sustain a healthy relationship from.
It definitely is, it's like, I really pride myself on being very self-aware and really actually being a very good communicator, and, with this already being such an intense time, to then feel like I'm with a partner that isn't even fully supporting me or actually really fully seeing me anymore, it was hard, and even when you see him say Madison is now connected to that, it was so dehumanizing to separate my name from my being, and I was kind of obviously, I didn't see that interview at the time, but I knew what he was thinking and feeling about me, and I was so confused, it's like I'm getting these breadcrumbs of validation and reassurance, and then all of a sudden I'm like, "Wait, what?" Hence the conversation in the kitchen where I'm like, "You're upset that I'm too sure about you? What are you talking about?"
Yeah. No, that was a really brutal comment. I remember at the time being completely shocked,
Yeah.
that he would say that. I mean, do you feel like things were left on the cutting room floor that showed more of the moments of validation, that, like, we were only seeing kind of the lowlights of the relationship after the pods?
I wish you could have seen a little bit more of us connecting. We really did have a, for the most part, fun kind of relationship. That said, I do feel like Joe was different on camera than off camera. And I know that's said a lot of times, but the thing that's different here is that he was more validating off camera. And I even had a conversation with him like, are you making it look like you don't like me on camera? So that was something that was very confusing to me. Joe was very aware of the cameras and very aware of his public perception. So, it's something that while I think it may have been left on the cutting room floor in some capacity, what you see is pretty accurate to what I experienced.
That's so interesting. Why do you think he would perhaps like intentionally want to highlight his lack of interest in you on
Right, like, that's
camera?
the opposite of what
Yeah.
people normally do.
It's a question for him. I really can't
Yeah,
speak for him.
fair enough.
I really can't. You are as confused as I was, truly.
Yeah, that's interesting because it does seem like the perception of the relationship is that there is, like, investment there, but when we saw, like, especially by the time you got back to Denver, when we see scenes between you 2, he often looks kind of checked out, like, you look at him and he's, like, somewhere else,
Not there.
and you were picking up on that at the time, it sounds like.
Yeah, I was absolutely picking up on that. I mean, it really every time that we were filming together, I was like, "Can you please just be in this moment with me? Like, stop focusing on the cameras." I mean, there were so many times that he would like turn and talk to production and like mention something about the cameras, and I'm like, it did get to a point where I was like, "Fuck the cameras!"
Yeah,
Be here with
Right.
me. Yeah.
Yeah, and how
that's
can you
wild.
even film this kind of show if you're constantly breaking the fourth wall in that way? Like you kind of have to
Exactly.
forget the cameras in order
100%.
to exist. Something that we were really struck by in this latest job is that there is a scene where Joe meets your family. And they are, by the way, so sweet, so supportive.
Yeah.
But from what we saw, a good portion of that like dinner ends up being him almost recounting the way that his 5-year relationship and engagement ended. And it felt like him telegraphing to you and your family the pattern of behavior that he was going to exhibit in like a few
Mm,
days. At the
mhm.
time, did that concern you at all?
It did concern me. I mean, he definitely like told me that he ended the relationship the day that he was on his way to mail the wedding invitations. So a red flag definitely went up there. Something else that stood out to me really big was he was telling my family, I was miserable in this relationship. And then you see after the breakup him saying, I feel relieved I would have been miserable. And it was kind of a aha moment for me where it was like, this has nothing to do with me and everything to
Mm,
do with your own demons, and you're the common denominator and the common thread, not necessarily
Yeah.
your part.
I am
right.
so
It's
glad that you
not
brought that
yeah.
up because that was something that I think really struck us as well. And also just it was sort of disturbing to see someone who like frames a relationship as something that you sacrifice your happiness for. And I was like, well, maybe Joe, maybe you need to like do a little bit of work to reframe.
Yeah.
Like no one wants to be sacrificed for by their partner. No woman is like, I'm gonna feel great in this relationship because my partner's really doing his best to tolerate me. What a great guy.
Right. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, most people don't end up in multiple relationships where they're miserable and they're like, that's just how it is. That's not the usual way things go. But at
Mhm.
the time, it seems like your family was sort of like, okay, well, don't do this to her, but that's fine. Were they a little more worried about it than they let on, or did they feel like, okay, he's learned his lesson and this time he's really choosing you?
I think that they were concerned. I mean, obviously I was talking to them almost every day while we were filming. I'm telling them the highs and the lows. And I think that they did have some reservations. I think that they were definitely like, I don't understand if you're so involved and you're so like ready to go on this, like why isn't he? Like what is the disconnect there? And truly they were just as confused as I was. It's like there weren't really any answers surrounding that.
Yeah.
Mm.
So going into wedding dress shopping, where did you feel like your relationship with Joe was at? Like, were you feeling good about things, hopeful?
It's actually really interesting. I did a private wedding dress fitting the day before because I wanted to have something that felt like mine, something that was off camera. It was just my family, my friends. And I told him all about it. I mean, I was so excited. I was telling him that you're going to have so much fun at tux fittings. Like, it was incredible doing this, by myself. Like, I can't wait to do it with the girls from the show. And he was very much like, oh, I'm so excited. I can't wait. It was so confusing truly watching back what actually happened at tux fitting and knowing what happened the night of tux fitting off camera was really, really distressing to me. The fact that there was a huge lack of communication and what almost seems like him leading me on.
So you feel like going into it, he was like telegraphing that he was really like excited and ready to move forward. And then the night
Yeah,
of
I
tux fitting, what happened the night of after the tux fitting after he ran out?
So the night of tux fitting, we went out to a bar in Denver, like a few of us. It was like me and maybe one other couple or two other couples, and then a whole bunch of singles showed up. I was like, how do they even know we're here? We go out to this bar at One Up, and I'm standing there telling his 2 guys that were at Tux Fittings that I love him, I'm excited about this, I just had an amazing time at dress fittings, like, telling them I wanna marry this guy. He's standing right there, they know full well what just happened at Tux Fittings, no one is telling me. Like, I'm literally standing there, ring on my finger, like,
Oh my God.
giddy, excited, and then I look over, and Casey has 2 hands on Joe's chest talking to him like this. In his words, she was giving me googly eyes. That night, after that, we end up going to another cast member's house. We all hang out, whatever. We go back to our apartment, and I have a real sit down with him. I'm like, look, I want to do this. Like, if you jump, I'll jump. Like, we're coming to the precipice together. Like, I want to do this with you. I need to know where the hell your head's at. Like, I know you're not going to talk about it on camera. His face dropped. He like went totally pale and he looked me in the face and he said, "You're not it. I'm going to say no at the altar." And that was honestly the actual breakup. And then we were supposed to go to brunch with my family the next day. I mean, at this point it's 3 in the morning. I'm
Oh my
hysterical. It's
God.
especially after seeing what I just saw at the bar, like it was really horrible. And then the next morning production came. We filmed actually in the morning. You don't get to see that. And then we ended up finishing the filming that night after I slept some and kind of recovered with my family.
Wow. Okay.
Wow.
So then because you also said something the morning after, like, does this have something to do with the singles? And we had no context for that at all. But it was really something that happened like after the tux fitting that you saw.
Yeah. Yeah. It was literally that night. And it was literally, I mean, his words were, Casey was giving me googly eyes. And I'm looking over and watching her flirt with him while I'm standing with a ring on my finger telling his groomsmen that I love him and want to marry him.
And no one has clued you in. And he has not like sent
No,
you a text when he leaves tux fitting to say,
no.
hey,
And
I kind of
that's
had
the
a panic
most
attack.
Yeah, that's the craziest part to me is that I'm like, why didn't he say, "Hey, production, let's grab Madison. I need to talk to her tonight." Like, why the hell would he be like, "Yeah, we're all going out," or like, why wouldn't he say, "I need to talk to you one on one," if he didn't even want to do it like on camera? Like, just the whole way it was handled was really hurtful when I was doing this with my whole heart and being my most authentic self. To see somebody treat me that way behind the scenes was just really sad.
No,
That's
I would have been
wild.
livid. I would have been
Yeah.
Yeah.
absolutely
And I
livid.
think
That's gross.
watching, you just assume that he came straight back from the tux fitting and was like, I'm sorry, it's over.
Or
And
like at least texted you. I thought, oh, maybe he like sent a text and then they had to regroup the next morning. I didn't realize that you guys had been
together,
spending time
and he
together as
didn't
if you
say
were still
something.
together.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, we were fully out, I'm even talking to them about what tux he picked out. I mean, it was like it's insane for me
Jesus.
to watch it back. Yeah,
That's wild.
yeah.
Okay.
Because we
Wow.
really saw like a full meltdown. Like he couldn't even he didn't even want to like put the tie on. He didn't want to try the pants on. I was getting flashbacks to that scene of like Carrie and Miranda in Sex in the City when they go to try on the ugly dresses
Yeah,
and Carrie gets like
Yeah.
a rash on her back and has to be ripped out. I was like, that's Joe
yeah,
in
I
this
mean,
moment.
honestly, I feel like that behavior at the end of the day, and now knowing what I know now, motives spoke for themselves. The motives of what we are all here for really speak for themselves now.
Do you feel
Yeah.
like he was there for the cameras for TV?
I don't wanna speak for him. I don't know what he was there for. It
You
Yeah.
don't
wasn't
feel like
me.
he was there for you.
Yeah.
Um, Did you appreciate the needle drop of Sabrina Carpenter's man-child, though, as much as we did?
Yes! Oh my gosh. I remember watching that, and I just hear, "Oh boy," and I'm like, "No way." I was screaming at that.
I was like, "Oh, Love Is Blind editors did their big one
Yeah.
with this one."
And right? That was amazing. I could not believe that that was the cut too.
So good.
Incredible. I had goosebumps. It was just so fitting. Um, so we end up seeing this breakup conversation the next morning, which is a really tough conversation to watch. And we see you kind of asking Joe repeatedly to kind of give you something concrete so that you can really wrap your head around what's missing. And he can't do that. I mean, do you think that that's just because he had nothing concrete to say, or did you feel like he was trying to like obfuscate something? Or like, I know it's just like hard sometimes to wrap your head around a relationship ending, but like, did you feel like there was something more going on?
I don't know.
Mm.
I know just the night at the bar was very weird. Honestly, I don't know. Give me something that I can feel like is a little bit more tangible than just like I'm saying no, just like why?
Right? You're like, I got that. I got that
Yeah.
part. You're saying no.
Yeah. Was there
Yeah.
any moment during the conversation or even watching it back where you're like that you're really struck by, or that where you're really like, okay, like this is definitely over? Like, what was that point in the conversation where you think it kind of like comes into focus?
Well, watching it back, when I said it's interesting to me that it's on the heels of meeting the singles last night, and you see him like kind of get shifty eyed, that was something I didn't notice in the moment.
Mm,
So watching that back, like my mom, her words were boom right there, his mask slipped. And I was like, wow, like I didn't notice that in the moment. Um, I guess the moment that I felt like it was truly done is, when I took my ring off and I was like, I guess like for the second time, where I'm like, I guess that I shouldn't be wearing this anymore. It's kind of like this conversation isn't going to go anywhere else. I'm not going to get any answers to this, and I need to begin my healing journey at this point.
Did you keep the ring? Did you get to keep the
Yes,
ring?
I did.
Good.
good.
Okay. We were like, she better have kept the ring.
I did. Yes. No
The
question about where the ring goes at this
Yeah,
point.
Yeah,
no.
truly the least you deserve after that. Watching it back, like, it's so tough because you're clearly, like, in so much pain, and Joe just seems, again, like, out to lunch, checked out, like, doesn't wanna be
Yeah.
talking about it. Is
Yeah.
that how you experienced it in the moment? Like, we don't know how long these conversations are or, like, the highs and lows they go through.
Yeah, that particular conversation, I think, was probably more like 40 minutes. It may have even been longer. Um, yeah, you it was like that the whole time. There's actually a part that you don't see when he first stands up after I say, like, "You're watching my heartbreak, you don't even care." And he stands up to just go pack, and I say to him, "Your true colors are really coming through, Joe. Like, thank you for finally showing me that." And that's a part you don't see in that conversation where it's kind of like I'm suddenly having the resolve of everything that I've been experiencing through our whole relationship come into focus, and it's kind of a culmination of, "Oh, okay, this is actually who you've been this whole time, and I was just
Mm.
idealizing you."
That's
Yeah.
interesting. So you feel like by the end of that breakup conversation, even though you were in pain, you sort of had clarity that like this isn't my person either.
I think so, I think at that point it was like, he's not choosing me, and I want and deserve to be chosen, and, in the pods, I felt so chosen, I felt so wanted, and I hadn't felt that literally since reveal,
Right.
and
Mhm.
it was kind of just like a all right, it's time for me to be real with myself and stop being such a lover girl and, really allow the curtain to come down.
No, I really
Yeah.
related to you in some of those moments, but I think we were sort of watching, just wanting to shake you and be like,
Yeah.
demand better for yourself.
Well
Like you don't like him either, maybe. Like
You and the rest of the world. I mean, I literally made a TikTok. I'm like, "You don't know what's good for me," and everyone's like,
I
"Yes,
saw that.
I do." No. I mean, I
Oh.
did not listen to my intuition, I think I wanted to be loved, and I was so excited that this experiment was working for me that I wasn't allowing myself to see what the reality was in front of me.
Yeah, it's hard when it's so like, so close to being what you want, and you're like, "I
Yeah,
can just, like, wish, hope, pray my way to it being exactly what I want." Like, it's so close,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah,
easier from
yeah.
the outside or, like, a year later to kind of
of
identify that,
course.
of course. Like, in that moment, it seemed like you're still trying to be very, like, gracious to him. You go to him and you're like, "I'm glad that we had this experience together, like, even though I'm angry with you right now," and you hug him. Meanwhile, we
Yeah.
see his, like, confessionals after the breakup, and he's like, "I'm relieved, like, weight off my shoulders." Did you have any idea that that's the kind of thing that he was saying after the breakup, or was that, like, a surprise?
No, that was a surprise, and it's funny because the way I watched it, I was like, "Wow, like, your tune really changed here." Like, you can even hear, like, his tone of voice is different, like, his
Mhm.
demeanor is completely different. I mean, again, like, how my mom said it, the mask came off that day, and I think that he could no longer hold it up, and that was that, and as far as for, being graceful and gracious with him, I think something that was really important to me through this whole thing was to at least honor myself and try to stay true to my character as much as possible, which I definitely could have done a better job in some moments, but, I think it was important to at least honor the fact that we did go through this together and that we are forever tethered in this way of, Madison and Joe season 9.
Yeah, no, I completely understand that instinct. You're like, no one is going to understand this experience
Yeah.
as we lived it
Yeah.
except for the two of us. You are connected, and you always, I think you always, when in a relationship ends, want to reach for like that thing had meaning.
Yeah.
And it felt like you
Absolutely.
were trying to kind of put a cap on that, and he was just looking for the exit signs, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah, I felt that too.
Yeah. Have you spoken to him since the breakup?
So we had talked on the phone the week after filming. It wasn't he actually called me. There wasn't a whole lot of conversation, same kind of thing, not a lot of dialogue. And then I figured, okay, maybe if we can meet up, I can get some answers. And I even said to him, like, I think the sooner we can get to being normal, the better, right? Because we're gonna
Yeah.
have to see each other like it's, been a while and we're still having to interact, right? So we got dinner together. Was not normal, was just still weird, and then he walked me to my car, we're kinda saying goodbye, we hug, we end up kissing, we end up start making out, he starts crying, like, tearing up, and I'm like, "What is this? Like, what is this?" I mean,
What?
Yes. I'm like, "What is this?" And he's like, "I don't know, that was weird," and then just kinda, like, leaves. And I texted him, I'm like, "Part of me almost wanted you to, like, come over so we could, like, talk," and he's like, "Yeah, like, I would've." And then I was like, "Why did you tear up? Like, what was that?" Because it was, like, very clear that there was still emotion there. Um, and he's like, "I don't know, that was weird." Like, I was like, "Let's play a game, name that emotion," and he never responded.
God.
He's like, "Nope,
Oh
nope,
boy.
can't name one, can't
Oh
name
boy.
one."
I
That's
mean,
what I would've
Oh
thought.
god.
but I mean, I guess in a way it makes sense because he's clearly unable to like understand when he's happy or sad in a relationship,
Yeah,
that like maybe there's like a challenge with understanding emotions there, but that is
yeah.
a very weird experience for you to have after all of
That's
this.
also like such a
Very
mind
confused.
fuck.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. I mean, that if you wanna sum up my relationship in 1, 2 words, that's it, mindfuck. Like, it
Yeah.
was just, this is done, it's concluded, and now you're crying because we had a little goodbye makeout sesh? Like, what?
Wait,
Have
how long was that after filming? Sorry, I might have missed that.
That must have been 2 or 3 weeks after filming.
Okay.
We had
okay.
Okay.
I went up to my mom's, yeah, I stayed up there with her and kinda just healed and sequestered for a while, so I think that was 2 or 3 weeks after we finished.
Got it. Okay.
Wow.
Wow.
And have
What a
you
roller
seen him
coaster.
since then?
I've run into him at a couple of just, like, mutual friends' parties. I saw him at, like, a pool party last summer, and then that was the last time I'd seen him since
Mm,
the reunion, but yeah.
yeah.
Right.
So a lot of times the cast from Love is Blind becomes very tight. And we were curious, like, if you're close with anyone from the show, like, what's the social scene like with you guys?
Yeah, actually, honestly, some of my very best friends are from the show. I'm very close with Anna, very close with Kate.
Mm.
Um, I'm actually very close with Annie. I love KB. Like, I'm friends with Shelby, Hillary. Obviously, you don't get to see them, but yeah, I would say really my best friends from the show are Anna and Kate.
Oh,
Oh, we
we,
really liked both of them, and we were like,
yeah,
gone too soon.
I know. I was
I
literally like,
know.
oh, Anna, those were the days.
Yeah.
Um, well, that's so nice. What about the guys though? Because I feel like this crop of guys was even rougher than usual. Like, how do you guys all hang out, or are they
To be
better off camera?
right, right, some of 'em. I would say, I'm very close with Anton, actually. Like, he
Hmm,
kind of had my back, like, at a get-together when Joe was there, and he kinda, like, called Joe out. So, I call
Interesting.
Anton one of the girls. He's a girl's girl.
oh,
Um,
wow. I never would have
Yeah,
pegged
would
him for
not have
that.
pegged that.
yeah,
With
Joe's incredible. Like, he's such a good guy. Like, watching his edit, I was like, "Huh, that's not
huh.
what I see," but anyway, so Anton's great. Jordan's sweet. I'm not super close with him. I don't really talk to Nick very much or Edmund. And then a few of the other guys that you don't see on the show that I do talk to every now and then.
Yeah. So like it sounds like you came out of this at least with some wonderful friendships. Are you glad overall that you did it, or are you like on balance, maybe next time I would say no?
No, oh my gosh, I would do this 1,000 times over. Like, just the amount of personal growth that came from this was incredible. I always say that you can't run from yourself in the pods, and it really opens up the door for you to explore yourself on a deeper level and even explore demons that you don't know that you have. So, at the end of the day, like, I found love in the pods in more ways than I could have
Mhm.
fathomed, and the biggest one being, like, falling back in love with myself.
I love that.
That's beautiful.
Oh, Madison,
Yeah.
this has been such a delight to chat with you. You really have
Thank
such
you.
like a thoughtful view of this experience. So it's
Thank you
so
so
nice to get
much.
to meet you.
It's so great to meet you guys. Thank you for having me. This was great.
It was great. Thank you so much, and best of luck out there. We're looking forward to seeing the reunion and how things all shake out.
Thank you. Can't wait.
And on that note, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we will be talking to Kate from this season of Love is Blind, who left us in the pods, but left us with so many questions about her relationship with Nick and what we didn't see. So we're really excited to talk to her.
And we are back. Kate, welcome to Love to See It. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. So excited to be here.
Oh my
Yes,
gosh,
we're
you just told us we're your first podcast, so we're deeply honored.
Oh, well, I'm honored that you guys wanted to hear my story.
We're so excited to finally have you on. I know we're a little late getting around to it because you did leave the show mostly after the pods, but now we get to talk a little bit about the pod mixer, so it's perfect. So, first of all, we wanted to ask like how your journey started. Were you a fan of Love is Blind? Like why did you apply?
Yeah, I had seen the first season during COVID. I think it was when it came out, and it was great. But other than that, I hadn't really watched the show. And I had a producer reach out to me via my DMs asking if I was interested. And I honestly was like, is this a scam? But I just took the call anyway to see kind of what it was about. And honestly, that was probably my like thought process the whole time because it's a pretty long process. And they didn't actually tell us we were going on the show until maybe 2 weeks before we left. So the whole time I was like, "No, it's not happening. No, I don't know. I don't know." And then they're like, "Okay, time to pack your bags." And then I was like, "Oh my god, I'm so not prepared." But I did watch some more prior to leaving for the show just to have a better understanding of kind of what to expect.
You're like, I did my research.
Yeah, I did my best anyway.
So, once you get into the pods, the only relationship connection we really see from you is this connection with Nick. And we were curious, like, we saw a lot of women found him to be sort of cocky or like he came on too strong. What kind of drew you to him in that pod environment?
Yeah. Well, it's not really shown, but Nick and I actually have very similar interests. I am very much a mountain girly. I love to
Mm.
ski, I love to hike, I love backpacking, camping, and Nick is really into a lot of those same activities. So when I met him and he told me that he lived near Breckenridge up in the mountains and he also loved to ski, we just had so much we bonded over. Um, I think a lot of people were really off put by him, but I just was like, I feel like we're clicking so much, and I think we aligned on so many things that it felt very natural for me and him initially.
No, that actually makes a lot of sense because we didn't see that hobbies conversation, but I totally understand if you felt like you had a similar lifestyle to him, why that would draw you to him. And are there any other conversations or moments from the pods that you wish we had gotten to see as an audience?
Yeah, I mean, I had 2 other really strong connections. My other 2 were Blake and Brendan. So,
Mm.
it's wild because you only see the moments with me and Nick, and a lot of the other people, it's the same, but we're also having other really strong, intense connections with other people at the same time. So that's a big part of what makes this all so complicated is you're constantly kind of trying to see where everyone stacks up and figure out how to move forward, with the matches that you have as the time goes on.
Wait,
That's
that's so
fascinating.
interesting that I'm like, you and Annie seem to have similar
You
taste.
are in a love square.
I know, isn't that funny? Yeah. I know, yeah, we both liked Brendan and Nick. I don't think she was with,
Mm.
Blake, but yeah, those 2. Isn't that so funny? Because those were my top 2 too.
So, at what point did you kind of start to feel, or did you start to feel like it was going to be Nick, or do you feel like you still had like multiple connections going at the point that things ended with him?
Things moved very quick with him. I think it was like day 3. It's not shown, but he wrote me this letter, and it was just this like long letter where he was like, "Kate, I'm really enjoying getting to know you. I've been loving every second of meeting you, and I'm really falling for you." So I feel like really quickly he just like kind of snatched me right up. So I was seeing those other connections, but I remember at one point Brendan came into my pod and we had been talking for a while. And I realized I hadn't even remembered him the entire process. Like I kind of was like, wait
Mm.
a minute, who is this guy? Because we're really clicking. But I think I just had been so hyper focused on Nick the whole time that I wasn't really paying attention to any of my other matches initially.
Oh, interesting. So, he was like really kind of capturing your focus because he was so like, I'm for you. Did you ever cut off your other connections?
Yeah. So towards the end, Blake just left. So
Right,
there he
right.
went. Bye, Blake. Love him though. He's such a sweet guy. And we're really good friends now. And I think Brendan was deciding between me, Annie, and the other girl, Anastasia. And I remember going into the pods and I was I was really debating between Nick and Brendan at that point in time. And I remember going into the pod and kind of looking for a little bit of affirmation from Brendan, like, are you my boyfriend? And saying something like that to him. And he kind of gave me nothing. And I knew after that, like, I was like, this is over. Like,
Wait,
he just was kind of dragging his feet and not confirming anything.
wait, I'm sorry. So you and Annie had the exact same situation where you were both like, I'm not getting validation from Brendan. And meanwhile, Nick was feeding affirmation to both of you. These men.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, it worked because that's what you need in the pod, and also, like, I'm very much like, I believe when you're a girl, like, for a successful relationship, this is my belief, I think the guy should always like the girl a little bit more, just a little bit more, right? And I felt like with Brendan, we were very, like, equal, but we did have a really cute, flirty banter, like, I was losing my voice, which you can kinda tell in the episode, I was so raspy, and I talk about it with Nick one night before I go home early. So he would call me Scarlett. I would walk into the pods and he'd be like, Scarlett, is that you? Because I had this like raspy voice going on. But yeah, towards the end, I mean, I think he was also really battling with which girl he wanted to move forward with because we needed to cut it down from 3 to 2 at that point.
Mm.
And I was doing the same thing with him. And then I ended up not seeing him again after that. But obviously we've, talked and stuff in Denver since. So it's all good.
So, speaking of Nick coming on pretty strong, you say a couple times that his behavior felt a bit like love bombing. Having had space from the experience, do you feel like he was love bombing you?
Yeah, I do still feel that way, and the reason is because, I mean, if you've ever been love bombed, immediately they are so sweet, so kind, so charming, like, it's like the guy who's planning every vacation with you, and then the next day he doesn't text you back, right? That's kind of what it felt like with Nick. He was all in, and then he wasn't. I mean, and you've seen our breakup conversation, he goes from, "Once you have my love, you have it forever, and I will love you until we're 10 feet underground," just saying these kind of silly things. And then all of a sudden we're breaking up and he's like, this is over, you know? So for me, I really had like whiplash and I still do feel that way. Is he allowed to move on and have feelings for other girls? Absolutely. But that is textbook love bombing. It is. So I think he was kind of trying to lock me down so he could kind of see what else was out there. And it's actually not shown, but Nick wasn't seeing Annie the entire times we were in the pods. He actually requested to see her maybe 4 days before the end, 4 or 5 days. I'm not exactly sure of the timeline. So they actually weren't together the full 2 weeks. When I started to pull away from Nick because we started to have some differences in values, that's when he was like, oh shit, I don't know if this is going to work out with her. Let me see if it'll work with someone else.
So he like stopped seeing Annie and then he was like, actually bring her back because I need options. I had no idea you could do that.
So we all start off, it's kind of confusing. We all start off seeing each other. But at some point in time, we have to cut those connections down. So for one reason or another, they hadn't been together after the first like few days, but you can request to see someone back later on. And that's what he did with Annie.
Okay.
Yeah. So
That's so interesting.
It's interesting that you bring up values with you and Nick, because something that we saw was a conversation between Nick and Annie connecting over some attitudes about LGBTQ plus children that I think from our perspective felt problematic, rather homophobic. And we were wondering if like that was a topic that you and Nick had broached and how it felt for you watching that conversation.
yeah, that's a really good question. So that was actually a question in this. They give us this list of questions that we can choose to talk about with one another. And it's something that really actually moves the process along more quickly because it forces us to have these deep questions that maybe you normally wouldn't talk about on a first, second, third date. So that was a question in the book. I don't know if me and Nick ever discussed it, but I do remember discussing it with Brendan. And my answer was very different from what, their answer was. I love the gays, the days, the she's, the days, the whatever. I love them all. So, maybe as the values would have started developed, they might have that might have been another kind of point of contention. And I think they've both squashed that since. I think they both have kind of clarified that, that's not what we were really trying to put across. But it was hard seeing that because it was a very controversial conversation, obviously. And, we had also had, a kind of controversial conversation about religion, which is sometimes taboo. And, stepping out of the pods and knowing that was a big part of why we broke up. Obviously, I had some level of anxiety of, oh no, like, are people going to hate me because I'm not super religious, right? And,
Mm.
people really like to put themselves in a bucket and have these polarizing values. And I'm very much someone that can see both sides to every story. Even with the religion topic, it doesn't show all of Nick and I's conversations about it. But at one point, I was like, Nick, I would go to church with our kids. I would go to church with you. I'm just not going to have a personal relationship with God at this time. I was trying to make compromises with him, but I think it just wasn't good enough for him. And then at the end, that ended up being, difference in values, and that's fine. But
S-
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I do think it's important to align on those things, obviously, especially if we're going to be getting married, not and raising kids together. Um, so yeah, that was definitely a tough conversation to watch.
Yeah, and we did wanna ask you about the conversation about faith, and it seems like that's the value, that maybe started causing a bit of a wedge, but you can confirm or deny. But that was such a fascinating conversation because we see a couple instances of it. We see this conversation where he says like, "Oh, I have this sort of personal, quiet, private relationship with God," and you said, "Oh, well, after my mother's, like, horrific battle with cancer, I can't really believe in God." Like, in that moment, do you think that you were taking the same things away from your revelations about your faith, or do you think that maybe you weren't quite meeting each other there?
Yeah, I think it definitely was a misunderstanding on both ends because what I took from what I heard from him is, yeah, like I have these values, but they don't play a very big role in my life. He just told me that he doesn't actually go to church regularly, but he has a personal relationship with God. Maybe he prays, I'm not really sure the details of it. Um, so I took away from it, okay, like I obviously was raised Catholic, but I've kind of taken a step back from religion after what I experienced in life. And I think when we had that final conversation about religion at that point, I think I was kind of sick of hearing it. So that's why you hear me say, like, I had already offered compromises. And I think that's why I just was like, no, like, I'm just like done. You know what I mean? Um, so yeah, I think at that point it was clear we just weren't communicating well. He was hearing what he wanted to hear. Maybe I was hearing what I wanted to hear, and we ultimately weren't aligning. And I think well before that conversation, I had already addressed the love bombing maybe a day or two prior. So he
Mm,
felt me really starting to pull back on multiple
mm.
levels. So he had told me he loved me and, written me this letter. And it was this whole romantic thing. Like I remember sitting in the pods when he was reading me this letter and I was like, holy shit, is this happening? Like, I can't believe this is happening. This is so crazy. Like, like, and I would wake up and I would think about him every day. Well, because we don't have phone, we don't have TV, music, nothing. I'd wake up, I'd do my makeup, I'd think about him, I'd think about what we're going to talk about. Like, it really was working for me. But I've also, I've been engaged in the past. I've been in what I would maybe describe as a failed relationship to some degree. So for me, I take engagement very seriously. I hate the fact that I got engaged and it didn't work out. And I knew I didn't want to do that again. So, that was really important for me in the pods to be confrontational about the things that we did disagree on. I would come out of a lot of my interviews, they'd ask you questions about what was going on and how your day was and how you're feeling. And I feel like every day I would come out like, I just feel like something's not sitting right with me. And I would go to Nick and, I think we just started to kind of like bicker at the end. um, so I was like, yeah, this isn't going well. I remember going into that last date, like taking a swig of champagne before I walked in and being like, this is going to be a ride. Like I knew it was going to be either really good or really bad. And I also, you hear me say in that day, our final date together, I was like, "You finally got a fight out of me. Are you happy?" Because, like, prior to, like, that last 2 days, everything had been perfect between us. Like, everything had aligned. So I think that was tough for him too. It's, like, almost like he couldn't handle conflict or resistance from someone he's seeing is what it kind of felt like to me.
Yeah, that tracks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that conversation, I was kind of shocked that he was really pushing you to personally embrace Christianity again when you had told him that it was something that was rooted in this really traumatic thing that happened to you. And I'm kind of curious, like, how it felt or if that bothered you that, like, he was like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, I know that your mom had this horrible illness and that's why you don't believe in God, but, like, you're gonna open that door again for me," right? Like, did it feel dismissive of what you'd been through?
Yeah, I mean, it felt like I think that was the hardest part of it all, and even watching it back, I mean, I cried when I, like, watched the conversation of me
Mm,
talking about my mom because
yes.
it is something that's very hard to talk about, and it's very deeply personal and vulnerable, and that's something I just share with any person that I'm talking to on the street, so it just felt so deeply invalidating when not only was he just kind of, like, didn't even sometimes it feels like he doesn't feel things, like, the lack of emotion sometimes was hard, and that definitely felt like that in that moment, and then to flip it around and use it as an excuse to break up with me, I think that's what I was reacting to when you see me, like, walking away crying and just really having a meltdown. Like, I just was like, I shared something that's so deep and personal and private, and sometimes I feel this way just, like, dating in general, like, you give away these pieces of yourself, and people just take
Yeah.
them and don't necessarily see the value and the meaning in those, and I think that's what I was really struggling with in that moment is, like, this was so personal and private to me, and you just I don't know, you just, like, threw it right back at me like it was nothing, you know? So it
Mhm.
was really hard, yeah,
No, that
to
makes
watch
so
back.
much sense, and I think I would have felt the same way, and it almost felt like he hadn't been listening to you because from our perspective, you had been quite clear about your relationship with Faith, and it in no way felt like you were dismissive of his relationship with his faith, but you made clear what your boundaries were in this moment for yourself, and then it almost felt like he used that as an out, and that, I imagine would have been
Mhm.
difficult.
Well, I think at that point, he knew I probably wasn't going to get engaged to him. So he was like, I
Okay.
better go focus on this other
Mm.
relationship, which I do see as a possibility. Um,
But then it
yeah.
seems like in the same conversation is when he was saying, like, "I will love you until we're buried so deep we're in the core of the earth." Like, must have been a real roller coaster of a conversation.
Girl, you're telling me I know. Like a lot of I like have seen so many people say like it looks like he like looked up on ChatGPT pickup lines to say to a girl. Because he said, I will love you until we're 10 feet underground. I will always fight for you. Once you have my love, you have it forever. Like there were these specific lines that almost felt scripted. So, I don't want to question his character because it's not necessarily fair to him, but many times it did feel like he was there to put on a show, to get, to the end, get through to the end, and I don't know, was that the case? I mean, I guess only he really knows, but I think looking back on it, that's kind of how it felt to me, especially, like, even just looking back when he wrote me that letter on, like, day 2 or 3, I was like, "It's a little soon, but okay." Like, um,
Yeah.
I appreciated it, So, yeah.
Was it weird to, like, see that he was saying a lot of the same things to Annie, or did you have a sense of that at the time? Like, what was your relationship with Annie at the time?
I knew he was only dating me up until a certain point, and once we started to have, I think it was after I didn't reciprocate the "I love you" or maybe a day later that he
Mm.
had told me that he had
Mhm.
another girl that he was dating, so I think he requested her sometime after that. Annie and I, like, didn't really talk, I feel like she kinda kept to herself in the pods, which granted, we all did a really good job of keeping who we were dating private, because we didn't wanna cause unnecessary drama as girls. I mean, even Madison, my best friend in the pods, would not tell me who she was dating until it was, like, down to the end because we didn't wanna realize, "Hey, we have the same match, and now this is gonna be a point of contention between us girls." So, I had no idea what was going on with Annie until the end because I did a little investigative work. Just because I was curious. I knew he had told me he was like there was a day where we did meals in the pods together, like, we would plan, like, kinda like a date night, like, him and I ended up doing sushi together, but he did breakfast with her, and he had told me they had, like, pancakes or something, so when they got back from their date, I was like, "Oh, Annie, like you just were on a date. How was it?" She was like, "Good. I was on a breakfast date." And I was like, "Oh, what did you have?" And she was like, "Pancakes." And I was like, I had a feeling, but that's how I found out. So not that it matters, like, not that I'm such a girl's girl to my core. Like, it's not like I'm gonna be mean to her because she's dating the same guy as me. That's the whole premise of the show. But I just was a little curious. I just,
Yeah.
wanted to know.
Of course, of course. And were you surprised when you then learned that Nick and Annie had gotten engaged?
Yeah, and you see me address that at, the meetup at Stampede because, I knew they had been dating, but, like I said, they didn't start dating till later on, so I was like, "How could you possibly start talking to
Mm.
this girl and get engaged this quickly?" You know? So that's what I said to Nick at the meetup, at the cast meetup, and, I mean, yeah, that's genuinely how I felt. I was like, "Are you here for a long, healthy, successful marriage, or are you just here to get engaged on the show?" I don't know. It just felt disingenuous to me, and that's what I've said all along, but like I said, he can only speak to himself, so
Yeah, it seems like that conversation did not, like, reassure you about Nick's intentions in your relationship.
no, I literally posted let me look at the stats. I posted a poll on my Instagram story last night, and it was, like, the clip of me and Nick having that conversation, and I said, "Was I buying it?" And 830 people said no, 27 said yes. So that's 3%
Rough.
thought that I actually believed what he was saying.
So you were
And,
just
like,
like,
listen,
okay.
I'm very respectful, like, I mean, what am I gonna do, fight with him over it? You know what I mean? Like, I'm not just gonna
Yeah.
sit here and be like, "Okay, you're lying," because obviously he's gonna continue with the story he's been saying all along, right? So, I just was like, "All right, that's what you have to say about it? Okay, I'm just gonna move on with my life." You know what I mean? What can you do?
Yeah.
But, I mean,
Yeah.
I said my piece. I said I thought it was off. It all felt off. It felt like love bombing to me. I think it was super manipulative the way it happened, but whatever. It's all water under the bridge?
Did you end up talking to Annie that night? We didn't really see you guys interact in the edit.
We talked, but, like, we never talked about their relationship. Like, same thing. Like I said, I'm a girl's girl. I'm gonna be respectful. Obviously, I know there's this awkward thing where she's dating this guy that told me he loved me, but, like, also, she didn't do anything wrong in that situation. She
Of
just
course.
happened to be dating him. So I have no beef with her. My beef is with him, you know?
Love that. We love that. That's a very healthy attitude. Were you surprised when you then learned that Nick had ended his relationship with Annie like more than a week out from the weddings?
I mean, no, I'm not surprised, because I mean, ultimately, they didn't I think they aligned on some like, personal values, but they didn't align on lifestyle. And it was like me and
Mm.
him aligned on lifestyle, but maybe not some personal values. And I mean, you really need to have both to a certain degree, which is why compatibility is super complicated. Like, meeting someone that
Mhm.
you can live with and spend the rest of your life with and make it work forever is complicated. It's not as easy as, you think. Like, you don't just click with anyone that you walk into a room with, right? Um, yeah, so I mean, I can't say I was entirely surprised. I had heard things about them while they were still filming here in Denver, and it seemed like they were really good. I mean, I saw them at the
Mm.
cast meetup, and I'd heard from Madison that they had like stopped by her house one day and they were just like really good. So I was like, whatever, I'm happy for them. Um, so yeah, it was surprising, but it also wasn't when I found out that it didn't work out, and pretty early on, it felt like so.
Yeah, that makes sense. The Mixer also was a place where we learned, it seemed like, more about how people in the cast felt about Nick, and that they didn't really like him. They thought he was disingenuous. We saw Joe give his whole sort of like comic performance. It's like,
He's the guy,
he's not
not
my
my
guy.
my fucking guy.
Yeah, and I mean, I assume in the pods you weren't talking that much about the guys because you didn't want to create awkwardness. But like after the pods, were you guys starting to discuss this amongst each other? And like, can you tell us what people were saying,
For
why they all
sure.
feel this way?
Yeah. Well, obviously I had my reasons to dislike him, right? Like our whole breakup and everything. I wouldn't say like I was angry with him, but I was definitely like hurt by the way it all went down. It just felt like so jarring to me. So I was a little upset. And then, you get home, we immediately have a little meet up with everyone who's not off filming, and everyone's like, who are your matches? Who are your matches? And, I'd be like, Nick. And they were like, oh, that guy, that guy. Like, they were, which was validating to me. I was like, oh, no one likes him. Okay, this makes me feel better.
Like,
But
dodged a bullet.
I had heard from the guys that he was very, yes, that's like the most popular comment I've gotten in like my DMs and everything. Girl, you dodged a bullet. I'm like, I know. I mean, like my intuition was spot on. Like my like radar was going off, and I wasn't completely sure where it was coming from, because I was like, am I being toxic? Like, why is he saying all the right things, but I'm feeling myself pulling away? Like, yeah, for sure. But I'd heard from the guys that he felt very performative in the boys' lounge as well. Just like getting down and doing a bunch of push-ups, or like, I just read this 500-page book, were some examples guys gave to me that like, so I don't know if they're true, but like just some random little things that were just like, okay, like, you know what I mean? And maybe he was just trying to connect with them, so I can give them some grace. But
Totally.
that's from what the guys had said to me, was that it felt performative from him on their side as well. So I was like, well, that's funny, because that's kind of what I experienced as well. And that's why you hear me say, I feel like he's calculated when I'm talking to Madison. So
Yeah.
I think Joe's stance on it was, well, Joe and Brendan are best friends, right? So of course he was like, upset that his buddy didn't get, his buddy's upset. Brendan was clearly very upset. So I think that's where that kind of came from.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Have you spoken with Nick at all since that mixer, since filming?
That's another reason that I kind of continued to feel that way, was he only apologized to me on camera, and like Blake and I, we like talked private one-on-one, like got a coffee, like we hashed it out, and I felt like that's the least Nick could do. If he had been hearing that I didn't think he was genuine, like that's the least you can do, is be like, hey, let's get a coffee, let's get a drink, let's sit down and talk this out. And I would probably have been immediately like, all is well in the world, like world peace has resumed, but he didn't. He only apologized to me on camera, right? The cameras are right here and he's talking to me, and that's also why I'm not buying it. And then he did DM me after he found out that he would be seeing me again for something else. So once again, I just was like, so you're going to have to respond to me, so that's why you're reaching out, or are you reaching out because you're genuinely apologizing? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Before we let you go, something we always like to ask is about who you are closest with from the show. We personally love the friendship, so we always love to hear, like, who are you still in touch with? What's the social dynamic been? Because I know you guys filmed like a year and a half ago.
Yeah. So Madison from the show is my absolute bestie. I was like, I've been released from my shackles, because starting yesterday, they were like, oh, you can post together again. So I was able to unhide our Instagrams. Like, yes, last year we were Dumb and Dumber together for Halloween, which is like so fitting if you know us. So yeah, we just like click. We are just like both very like bubbly and energetic and like girly, and we just like mesh so well. And then my other absolute bestie girl is Anna, who I absolutely adore. Same thing. I think the fans' reaction to her leaving speaks to why she's such an amazing girl. Like, she is just so sweet and deep and charismatic. I just love that girl. She doesn't deserve any of the hate she's been given. She is such a good, sweet, amazing person. So those are like my two like ride or die girlies.
Oh, yeah, we just talked to Madison, and she said the same, and I just love you guys as a threesome, because we loved the three of you on the show. We were so sad when Anna left early, and it's nice to know that you guys are still tight.
Yeah, I know. I was kind of sad they didn't show any of me and Madison's relationship really in the pod episodes, but you do see me speaking about Anna, and I was like, I'm sad. I don't want her to leave, because she had told me she was going to leave, and I was like, please don't leave. I love you. Don't leave me. I need you. Seriously, all of us are like each other's emotional support animals.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
it
love
was like,
that.
oh, she left us. It was hard, but Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Oh,
that's what me and Madison say all the time. We're like, you know what? We didn't find what we exactly were looking for in the pods, but we found love that is our new best friends who will be in our lives forever. So,
Oh, well, we love that. We love love, but we love friendship, frankly, possibly even more. So, Kate, thank you so much for joining us. This was such a delight. It's so great to meet you.
oh, likewise, girls. Thanks for having me. It was so nice to meet you.
Claire, that was so fun. I thought that both Kate and Madison were so wonderful to chat with.
yes, I loved hearing their reflections on this season and hearing more about what we didn't get to see. There's always so much you don't get to see from these relationships.
And Madison's read on Joe, especially, just like really confirmed some of the things that I feel like we were wondering in our own reflections. So,
Yeah,
yeah, I am just glad that it seems like both Kate and Madison came out of these relationships feeling good about themselves and being able to at least hold on to some new best friendships.
100%. You can always have the friendships. No one will take those from you. And on that note, that's it for this episode of Love to See It with Emma and Claire. Thanks to our wonderful guests, Madison Maidenberg and Kait Nemunaitis.
Love to See It is a presentation of Odyssey. The show is produced by us, Claire Fallon, and Emma Gray. This episode was edited by John Bahar. Our theme music is by Tamar Haviv, and our art is by Aaron Nestor.
If you like the show, please follow us, rate us 5 stars, and leave a review. And of course, tell all your friends about our show.
If you want to get in touch, you can email us at claireandemmapod@gmail.com.
You can also find us on TikTok at Love to See It Pod and Instagram at Claire and Emma Pod. And you can find our newsletter, Rich Text, on Substack at claireandemma.substack.com.
I'm also on Blue Sky at Emma Gray and on Instagram at Emma Lady Rose.
And I'm at Claire E. Fallon. Special thanks to the team at Odyssey, Eric Donnelly, Kate Rose, Moira Curran, Melissa Wester, and Hillary Ship.
We'll be back soon.
Can you keep